Hello and welcome to another tutorial. In this one we're going to do Blood Angels Red, or well, I'm doing Blood Angels specifically in this one, but as you can see in this example, just a really nice red that you can use for many different situations as well. So we're starting off a Wraithbone undercoat, and here we're just going to give a first application of Blood Angels Red mixed 50-50 with contrast medium, and check out these pro skills. Yeah, that just happened. So as you can see here, we're using a really liberal coating. The trick with the contrast paints is to get enough paint on there that you've really got a good flow control of where you want the paint to flow to. That's what gives us these really nice edge highlights that I get on the miniatures that you see me do the tutorials, and I've not really covered as much as I should, is flow control. If you don't apply enough contrast paint, then you're just going to be using it similar to what you would a normal paint. It's not going to be able to run, it's not going to be able to give that effect that you want from contrast paints. It's not going to be able to flow away from the edges and leave those edge highlights. So yeah, the aim of the game here is to put a lot of this paint on, manipulate it. It stays wet for a while, so manipulate it as much as you want and as much as you can to put it in the areas you want to, take it off the areas you don't, and yeah, just take it steady from there. As you can see, paint it panel by panel if you can. Sometimes you will go over the you will go over the edges onto another part. If you do that, try to make that the next area you're going to paint. It won't make too much of a difference if you do let some of that dry, but it can cause a little bit of staining. So try to do this as neat as possible, panel by panel, stage by stage. So just a couple of quick apologies. The first being how long it has been since I've done a tutorial. Fortunately, I've had a lot of real life issues get in the way. My last rig went kaput completely on me. I lost all my data on my hard drive, was unable to complete the second part, or should I say the second part of the tutorial for the Flesh Tearers that I just completed was completely lost with everything there. It's taken me a while to get back up and running, so there's that. And secondly, I apologise for the contrast of this video. Currently working with two lamps with daylight bulbs, so it's been a real big struggle to get the lighting conditions right. It's either too bright, it's either too dark, trying to get it in a position I can paint properly, yada 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 yada. I've got some LEDs on the way, it should arrive within a week, so I can make myself a little paint station, and hopefully that will alleviate some of the problems. So I've had a few people ask me a few questions. The first being which brushes I like to use, or I use. The answer to that is any old crap. This thing that I'm using for this is just some Humbrol thing that I found in a tub from years ago. My favourite brand are Broken Toad. They're really good for fine details, so I do like my Broken Toads. Second question I get asked often is how I like to mix my paint. Same answer really, any old way. I used to be real meticulous with this. Sometimes I would use dropper pipettes, as you can see here. Sometimes I just grab a big gob of the stuff and let it drip. A couple of drips of the paint, wash the brush off, a couple of drips of the contrast medium. It all depends how I'm feeling, depends what mood I'm in. You don't need to be meticulous with this. I used to be really bad with this, having to get the mix just perfect and things. Colour doesn't work that way. You take a look at anything around the room right now that's red, you'll see a load of different shades and hues in there. That just adds to how natural a model will look when you complete it. So our second colour here is Griffhound Orange. I believe I'm using this neat. Oh yeah, I am using this just neat. And I'm basically putting this on in the areas where I want there to be a bit more of a reflection. So anywhere, sort of the in-between. But the in-between where I want the shadow to be and where the areas are going to be the lightest. Sometimes that's going to be the entire panel. Sometimes that's just going to be like a third of the area, like a strip in the middle. Just play this by ear really to give yourself a little bit of life to the model, as if light's striking it from different angles. This is really up to you where you want to place these. So I've slowed the video back down to normal time just so you can see a little bit of brushwork here. So you see me a little bit more delicate brushwork than the usual. Slather it on for the undercoat. And you can see here there are some areas that I've got a little bit overboard with. There are a couple of areas like on the camera part, whatever that is on the top of the Terminator armour. You can see there's a little bit of staining there. And there's a little part on the shoulder, a little circle on the shoulder. Don't worry about these things. Use these to your advantage. The one on the shoulder, I'll just turn that into battle damage. That looks like a bullet hole. Perfect, great stuff. The one on the part next to the camera, I really don't know what that is, an air intake or something. That, as you'll see in a bit further in the video, we can blend that out no problem. That's going to actually turn into one of the nicest blends on the model. So I've just turned the contrast up in the video here. As I say, I've had a few troubles with this, but just to show you, you were able to really see the difference this colour's making. So hopefully a little bit brighter, you can see the difference this orange is making to this model. So just the usual technique here, making sure we don't paint any of the edges we want to leave as edge highlights. Winsor & Newton Series 7. That's another one that I use. That's what I'm using here, a 00 for these finer details. So I've mentioned this before in most of my other videos. When you add another layer of glazing, make sure you feather that layer out. So in other words, you add the colour to where you need it to be. Then clean your brush off with water, or I sometimes suck brushes. I'm trying to get out of that habit. Dry the brush off. It doesn't need to be completely dry. Just needs to be not carrying moisture in the bristles, and then just basically feather the edge so there's no strong stained edge left where you've applied that colour. So on to our final colour, which is yet again Blood Angels Red, mixed 50-50 with contrast medium. And we're just going to go over the areas of this we want to blend better and we want to be darker. Also at this stage I will use some Blood Angels Red neat with no contrast mixed in there for some of the even darker areas if I want even more contrast or even more shadows. Contrast medium mixed in there rather. One of the things that I love most about this method as well is when painting red, you've got two choices. Both are valid, both are good for different reasons. You can either highlight your red with white and you will end up with a lot of pinks, which then turn into like your more fleshier tones, such as your Acadian flesh tones, or what's the other one they use? Whatever the colours are, if you're using Citadel, you end up with that sort of nice pinky, fleshy, maroon sort of colour. The other option you've got when you're highlighting red, which people will go for, especially traditionally for the Blood Angel schemes, is people will highlight with yellow, which then gives you your more orange highlights, such as your Fire Bright. That turns into your more peachier flesh tones later for your extreme highlights and things as such. Both have their disadvantages as well, as you've maybe found yourself if you've ever tried to paint Blood Angels and you use white in Blood Angels Red, the traditional Citadel colours anyway, you'll end up with your miniature will just look too pink and it'll look awful. The other end of the scale, your miniature can end up looking bright orange, and I don't like my Blood Angels to be orange. I've always said that. I would even go with my Flesh Terrors colour scheme for Blood Angels myself. I would be happy with a red that dark because I love the old artwork. However, back on to point because I'm waffling. With this method, the Blood Angels Red mixed with the contrast medium, when it separates over the Wraith Bun, will give you slightly pinkier highlights, but then you're backing up the mid-tones with the oranges, and you end up with the best of both worlds in this situation, in my opinion anyway. So I really do like the way this turned out. So back to ×1 speed again, just to show you a little bit of fine brushwork. As you can see, the air intake thing at the top, as I said, turns out to be one of the nicest blends on the model, so don't worry if you get a bit of stainage, you can always use that, you can always turn that around. You know, contrast paints aren't these really unruly paints which some people think where if you make a mistake, that's it. No, you can fix mistakes on these models. So that's pretty much it for this tutorial. There's a little bit more painting to watch. Obviously I'm going to paint it until the end of this red, but there's not really much more to say about the colour scheme itself. So just as a bit of filler, really, a couple of my favourite painters and other channels to check out. There's a guy who does similar work to myself called Juan Hidalgo Miniatures. It does range, if you check out on YouTube, Heavy Contrast Marines. He does a lot of things similar to what I do, and then he does the traditional edge highlighting method on top of that. Comes out with some absolutely amazing results if you want to take your miniatures a step further with that. I'm more about getting the speed painting done here, well, a nice middle ground. I mean, for me it's economy. It's economy between enjoying the painting and getting a good result, but as I say, taking it that extra step, you get some really brilliant results. Obviously there's Miniac. Miniac is fantastic. Love his personality. He's a funny guy to watch. Who doesn't like him? Not much more to say there. And then there's a guy called Travarian. If you've ever seen any of his videos, his work is outstanding. His patience, I don't have that. I couldn't spend the amount of time he does on a miniature. I'd drive myself insane. But his painting is fantastic. So there are another few channels to check out if you want to diversify and look at some other different areas, different ways of painting. And one final thing I will say is if you want to make this red a little darker, like the cloak at the very beginning of the video, I did add an extra coat of Carisborg Crimson 50-50 with contrast medium or Lamium medium, either works. It is imperative you use the medium if you're going to use a shade, otherwise you will stain your miniature. But that's how I got the colour at the beginning of the video on the cloak to be slightly darker. I did go over the entire piece with a coat of that mixture, just to, and it does work, it brings all the colours together as well. I was really happy with the paint job on this one, so I don't think it's necessarily needed. It might detract from this Blood Angel to actually do that, but yeah, that's another thing you can do to darken the model at the end if you want to take it down a tone. So yeah, that brings this tutorial to conclusion, and thank you very much for watching. Hopefully next time you won't have to wait as long for the next video. Thank you very much.